morning for everyone, dear presidents, vice presidents, chief officials of the academies, dear guests, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Gergely Böhm. I'm the head of the President's Office and also a national contact point for the European Research Council in Hungary. And it is in this latter capacity that I have the pleasure to welcome you here and tell you about a few housekeeping rules. As you can see, we are recording the meeting, not streaming it, but recording it. And after further editing, it will be published on the website of the Academy. This means that if you want your comments to be heard on the recording, you have to use the microphones. And if you don't want your comments or your sound to be present in the recording, don't use the microphones. That's a very important message. So we will start with an opening remark, an introductory lecture, and then 5 presentations. And the speakers will be glad to answer your questions after each presentation as well, but we will have an open discussion. And if you have more substantial comments or remarks, please reserve it to the open discussion. So without any further instructions, it is my pleasure to ask Professor Eva Kondorosi, Research Director of the Institute of Plant Biology at the Visegrad Biological Research Center, member of the group of chief scientific advisors to the European Commission, and also former member of the Scientific Council and vice president of the European Research Council. Please, Professor Kondorosi, come forward or stay as you like.
So good morning and very warm welcome. This is really a very special occasion that we have here, the V4 Academies, also the ERC Executive Agency, young career researchers, ERC grantees, decision makers. So this is really the best forum to discuss what we can do to have a widening European participation which works better at the ERC applications. So as Gergely said, I had also the privilege to be an ERC grantee, which gave me really the freedom and recognition and really generous support for my work. And without this support, maybe I would not be able to return from France and stay in Hungary. When I joined the Scientific Council, actually, it was already running for 7 years, or no, 6 years. And then we realized that the countries which belong to the Soviet bloc really have very few grants supported by the ERC. But there were also the southern European countries which were not very successful. And this is why in 2014, ERC Scientific Council decided to have a working group on widening European participation. And I was the chair of this working group. So we first started with a survey which was sent out to successful and unsuccessful ERC applicants, and we got back almost 1,000 responses. So what are the major drawbacks, why certain applicants are not successful? So one of the major problems was the low mobility, lack of international experience, and really having ambitious programs. And this is why in 2015 we decided to have the ERC Visiting Fellowship Scheme, which made possible for applicants before application to go to ERC grantees lab and learn how to work, how should be the project, what ambitions are needed. Because usually at national system, the grant money was not sufficient for really ambitious big projects. So actually this fellowship program had some positive effects. So I was there until 2018, and there was an increase. So for example, Hungary was the best country among the post-Soviet countries in the ERC application already in 2016, 9%, but it went up to 14%. So even ERC said that Hungary is not anymore belonging to this class of countries. But fortunately, other countries like the Czech Republic came up very well. Also, with Poland, there was a little bit of problem that they have a very good national support system, so maybe there were less application as we expected. What we did, we had also several events at the different countries and tried to bring together decision makers, head of academies, and also the grantees, and think commonly what we can do together to make it better, what can be done at national level, at institutional level, and how ERC can help the applicants. So today we are here and hope that we can have a very constructive discussion and we can see what ERC can offer for us and what we can do at national level, how we can share the best practices to be really effective. So thank you very much, and now I would like to give the floor to Philip Kuipers from the ERC Executive Agency.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Very happy to be here. I would like to thank the organizer, to thank Professor Condorozzi and Professor Freund for your hospitality. So my name is Philippe Kuipers. I'm the head of units of the life sciences at the ERC Executive Agency. And I know that most of you know very well the ERC, but still I would like to give a few words, a few clarification about how we work, what we do. Then I will show to you some statistics about the application success of the widening countries, and more particularly of the V4 countries. And I also would like to put some more details on the two initiatives that the ERC has started with the purpose to widen excellence in Europe. Eva just mentioned one of those. I will also present a second one, which is a bit more recent. So what is the ERC? ERC is something quite different as compared to many other funding agencies that you may be used to know. It's different at two levels. The first one is the governance, and the second one is the freedom given to scientists. The governance, because this is not ruled by political people, this is ruled by scientists. ERC are scientists for scientists. So it means that there is an independent scientific council that is holding the ERC. Professor Condorozzi was one of the members of this scientific council for 6 years. We have a new president, who is Professor Maria Leptin, and they are, of course, supported by a dedicated structure, which is the ERC Executive Agency that helps to the implementation of the program. But ERC is also different because, as I mentioned, they want to give full freedom to scientists. Scientific excellence is the only evaluation criterion, and there is a decision to support individual scientists, not at all obligation to have consortium, as it is the case for all the other parts of Horizon Europe. It's a fully bottom-up program. The important thing is that PI should be free to submit whatever they want as a scientific ID. That's the most important thing, and they will be evaluated on that basis. There is no political priority, there is no thematic priority. Even in the worst of the COVID crisis, there was always resistance to open any topic COVID-driven. We just want to leave scientists free to do whatever the science they think is the best could be. And of course, we have an international peer review, experts from all over the world, mainly Europe, but also from the United States, Australia, Japan. We fund what is called frontier research, so going from the life sciences to social sciences. That's the DNA of the ERC. No, of course, we are part of a precise political, financial framework. This is the Horizon Europe program of the EU. This is the framework program for research innovation of the European Union. And you see we are there under the pillar 1 called excellence. Of course, there are many other opportunities to apply for Horizon Europe. I also draw your attention to the fact there is a specific part of Horizon Europe dedicated to widening participation, strengthening ERA. Something really important for many potential applicants also, or for some organizations in the V4 group. In terms of budgets, we have seen an increase in budgets with years since 2007. In the last 7 bars that you can see on the right part of the slide, this is the budget for Horizon Europe. Actually, there is an increase of the budgets, and I really would like to thank our former president, Professor Bourguignon. If we have such a budget, it's because of him. He has been defending this budget towards the politicians. He has been saving the budget for ERC, and I think we can really be grateful to him. Apparently, there is no real increase of budget as compared to the last year of Horizon 2020. In practice, there is, in the sense that Horizon 2020 was with 28 member states, including UK, while Horizon Europe, it's only with 27 member states without UK. So all proportions kept, there is an increase of the budget. Now, as I mentioned, there are 3 main actors for the ERC. Of course, the European Commission provides the funding, they guarantees the autonomy of the ERC, they assures the integrity, the accountability. And as I mentioned, the ERC Scientific Council is driving all the strategy of the ERC. They are in the deciding shoes. They pilot the ERC. Scientists pilot the ERC, not politicians. And one of the main responsibilities of the Scientific Council is also the nomination of the evaluation panels. So the experts who take part and who will be evaluating all the applications received are nominated by the Scientific Council, something very important. On the next slide, I just showed to you the different members of the Scientific Council. There are 22. As I mentioned, the president is Maria Leptin. She took mandates at the end of last year. There are 3 vice presidents. For life science, it's Professor Tavernarakis. For the physical science and engineering, it's Professor Jacek from Poland. And for social science and humanities, it's Professor Krone from the Netherlands. And you see all the different members. We have Professor Alice Valkarova in physics. And we also have Professor Laszlo Lovac for mathematics. I hope my pronunciation is correct. So on the next slide, this is, as I mentioned, all the implementation part is done by the ERC Executive Agency, of whom I belong to. Our responsibility is to run and implement what is decided by the Scientific Council. We run the evaluation, we ensure the project follow-up, we ensure the details of the communication activities, we manage the program somehow, always upon decision of the Scientific Council. Now, the particularity of the ERC is that somehow you can make your nearly your career within the ERC, in the sense that the ERC has different type of funding schemes. You start your career with a starting grant. It's between 2 and 7 years after your PhD, up to 1.5 million euro. And you can then follow up with what is called a consolidated grant, between 7 to 12 years after the PhD, up to 2 million euro. And then you may end up as an advanced grantee. This is, of course, with a higher track record in terms of research achievements. This is with up to 2.5 million euro. Those are individual grants. So starting grants, consolidator, advanced grants are really for individual PIs. We also have one collaborative scheme. It's the only one that we have. This is called the Synergy Grants. This is for up to 2 to 4 PIs, so not too big consortium under a limited size. That's a big difference as compared to the other part of Horizon Europe. And it's up to 10 million euro for 6 years. And finally, and only for ERC grantees, we have the proof of concept, where if an ERC grantee sees any potential in their proposal and in their research that they are pursuing, they can submit an application for a proof of concept in case they want to pursue some or to explore some commercialization purposes. They can go for what is called a POC, proof of concept. Those are lump sums of 150,000 for 18 months typically. So this is the funding schemes landscape that we have at the ERC. Again, those are decisions of the Scientific Council. They drive those strategies. If they want to modify that, they will modify it. This is not up to us to do that. It's really a decision of the Scientific Council. Now, as I mentioned, the ERC really gives a lot of freedom for implementing research. PIs have the full freedom to work on the topic of their own choice, with a team of their own choice. With the 5 years grants, with a comfortable envelope of money, they have a true financial autonomy for 5 years. They can, of course, negotiate with their host institution the best conditions to work. What we see is that ERC grantees have more power to attract some collaborators, some team member, and also some further funding, because we see that it's kind of a magnet. Once our ERC grantees have their grants, it can help them to attract even additional funding. One very critical item is also the portability, meaning that the PI have the freedom to move with their grants in any host institution localized in a member state or associated country. And they do so. They are using that. On the next slides, this is the evaluation panel structure. You see the 3 domains: life sciences, physical sciences and engineering, and the social sciences and humanities. In each of those domains, you have between 7 and 11 evaluation panels. I'm just insisting those are evaluation panels. This is not at all corresponding to topics. The purpose of those panels is only to help the applicants to know what will be the expertise that will be evaluating their proposal. It's also very helpful for the Scientific Council, which, as I mentioned, decides on who will be the member of those evaluation panels, who will be the panel members, if you prefer. For life science, for example, there are 9 panels, going from the very molecular aspects into the biotech aspects at the end. For physical science and engineering, we start with mathematics, we go up to materials engineering. With social science, we start up to economics, and we go to study human mobility. So there's a very broad panel of evaluation covering as broad as possible scientific research area. An important slide about the evaluation of the application. The ERC works with a 2-step evaluation. So there is first what is called an executive synopsis with up to 7 pages. And this is the synopsis at the step 1 that will be evaluated by the panel members. I'm insisting on that at the step 1 because those panel members somehow are generalists. At the step 1, applicants have to convince a panel of generalists. First, by doing a remote evaluation, individual, then they come for a meeting, and there are 3 possibilities. Either they are scored with an A, meaning that they are advancing to the step 2 of the evaluation process, or they are scored with a B or with a C, meaning that they are rejected at that level, with some restrictions for resubmission. At the step 1, if you have a B, you cannot apply for 1 more year. At the step 1 with a C, you cannot apply for 2 more years. We had to do that because otherwise we would be floating under the number of applications. This was the only way to control a bit the number of applications. This is not a pleasure to do so, but we have no choice about that. Otherwise, our success rate will be below 5%, and this cannot be. At the step 2, this is still the panel members, generalists who are assessing the proposal. It's a larger proposal there. Everything is submitted at the same time, but this second part of the proposal, it's a bigger part of the proposal with more details on the implementation of the research plan. But there, at the step 2, panel members are also assisted by remote reviewers. It means specialized people chosen ad hoc for each specific proposal. So at the step 2, you will be facing generalist and specialized people. At the step 1, you face only generalist people. It's important in the sense that the first executive synopsis for the step 1 has to be written, taking into account you will be facing generalist panel members. At the step 2, the full proposal is written in a way that it can also face generalist plus specialized ad hoc reviewer. And of course, the scientific quality is the sole evaluation criterion. What we see as typical reasons for rejection of proposal is first the scope, sometimes too narrow, sometimes too broad, unfocused. We still do see a lot of incremental research. It means not enough risk-taking research, not enough daring research. That's not always easy to respect a good balance there. I can perfectly imagine. Sometimes the PI is too much surrounded by too many collaborators, giving the feeling that the independence or the capacity of the PI to drive the proposal and the project on its own, it's a bit more limited. The work plan is not always detailed or clear enough, and sometimes insufficient risk management. Those are, in a nutshell, some typical reasons for proposal to fail. Of course, there can be many others, that's clear. It can also be just the quality of the proposal that is just not good enough. There are, of course, a lot of noise and rumors circulating about the ERC. I just would like here to address some of them. First of all, when I say ERC funds frontier research, it does not mean that we fund only fundamental research. As a matter of fact, we have a lot of applied research funded by the ERC. For example, in the physical science and engineering, there are majority of applied sciences. But also in LS, we see a lot of applied sciences. So it's about frontier research, pushing frontier of science, daring, be risk-taker. The budget distribution. The budget is distributed between the different panels that I've just shown to you 3 slides ago as a function of demand. It means that the success rate is flat all over the different panels, all over the different domains. There is no panel that has a higher success rate, unless, of course, the panel evaluators consider there is not enough quality in their panel, then, of course, there will be less proposal funded. But in principle, they have the money for each panel to guarantee the same success rates for each and every panel, with all the pros and cons that go together. Finally, the host institution. The host institution is not an evaluation criterion. We insist on that briefing after briefing. This is very important. We evaluate the ID, the science, and of course the capacity of the PI to implement this ID. This is very important. There is never any evaluation of the host institution. Of course, there are some successes, I guess you know. There is nothing especially new for that one, for you, in terms of number of researchers, number of articles, number of patents. By the way, we have, if you look at the whole EU program, H2020, this is the ERC that has proportionally the highest number of patents as compared to the other pillars. That's quite interesting. It shows that if you leave scientists free to do whatever they want as research, they will have the necessary patent. You don't need to ask for too many topics to drive science. There is one number I would like to mention in more detail in this slide. This is the number of research institutions. I was saying that host institution is not an evaluation criteria. And you see here that there are close to 1,000 of research institutions in EU or associated countries which are hosting at least one ERC grantee. Of course, we know that 50% of the ERC grants goes to more or less 40 to 50 top research institutions. That's a fact. But still, look at the spread of those HI, close to 1,000 of them. Now let me go through some statistics after those facts. So This slide shows to you the number of ERC-funded projects by country of host institution, not by the country of the applicants or the grantees, by country hosting one ERC grantee. So basically, for UK, you can have a Dutch or Hungarian PI hosted in UK. It will appear in the UK bar. So what do we see here? First of all, that's the number of grantees for the widening countries, it means mainly EU 13 plus Greece, Portugal, is quite low. But this is actually reflecting a quite low number of applications submitted. On average, the widening countries, including the V4, are submitting proportionally a lower number of applications as compared to countries like France or Switzerland or Spain or the Netherlands. The color in the bar indicates the difference, the distribution between the three main funding schemes, starting, consolidator, advanced grants. More or less, this is quite balanced in most of the countries, I have to say. This is the same figure, now plotted with the colors within each bar divided by the three domains: life sciences, physical sciences, social sciences. Again, this is quite balanced within each country on average. Of course, sometimes you see some discrepancies. Germany has traditionally a bit less social sciences, while the Netherlands have a higher proportion of social sciences. It can vary, of course, between different countries. I guess it also depends on some priorities given by some countries in terms of research, but that's a bit the way it is. So, number of applications, number of grantees is one thing. The success rate is something different. What we see is that the success rate is quite heterogeneous between different countries. What we see is that there are basically three countries that really stand above. This is the Netherlands, Switzerland, and Israel. Obviously, those are the top three countries in terms of success rate. By success rate, what I mean is the number of grantees versus the number of applicants. So it means that, for example, if a PI in Switzerland is submitting an application to the ERC, they have 21% of chances to be funded. And there, the numbers are quite interesting in terms of success rate, because there, in terms of widening countries, in terms of the V4 countries, the truth is quite different as compared to what we have seen in the two slides before. In the sense that, if we take the example of Hungary, for example, their success rate is 8%, which is the same as Ireland or Spain, even better than Portugal or better than Finland. For Poland or for Czech Republic, it's a bit lower. For Slovakia as well, it is really lower. We have only one grantee from Slovakia. But it means that success rate is a bit lower than the average, but still not always much lower. I will come back on that after. I will skip those two slides. Although this one is quite interesting, it plots the number of ERC grantees versus the growth expenditure in RNI of the different countries. There we see that the V4 are still a bit lower as compared to the average, but we also see progress of that. Coming back to the success rates, those are interesting slides because they show to you what are the success rate at the step one. This is the vertical bars on average versus the success rate at the step two. Those are the horizontal bars. You see in green, those are the green vertical bars are the average step one success rate of the what is called EU 15, so the former member states before 2002. The red vertical bar is the success rate of the EU 13. And you see that at the step one, this is the problem. The success rate at the step one is much lower as compared to the EU 15. While at the step two, those are the horizontal bars, you see that the success rate is similar between all countries, more or less, on average. Of course, there are some discrepancies. But for example, if you look at Hungary or Czech Republic, their success rate at step 2 is even proportionally higher than Germany. But the issue is at step 1. This is where some efforts have to be made. It's to convince this panel of generalists in a 7-page executive synopsis that the research is worth to advance to step 2. This is really important. Those are the figures for the starting grants, but we have the same figures for the consolidated grants, which is shown here. You see the same problem, basically. Huh? It's always step 1 that is causing issue. Step 2 is more or less the same. This is for the whole Horizon 2020. And this is the number for the advanced grants. Again, very, very similar as compared to consolidator and to starting grants. The issue is really more at the number of applications submitted and at the success rate of the step 1. Once those applicants advance to step 2, their chances are the same as any other. This slide details a bit more the step 1, where we see a higher number of C grades for the EU 13 or widening countries versus the average of all countries. Those are the red bars are bigger proportionally for the widening countries versus the all countries. So step 1 is really the problem. Now, this is of course something that, as Professor Condorisi mentioned, the Scientific Council is fully aware. They've taken a lot of initiatives to address this problem. And of course, the idea is really to capitalize on the full European potential that we have in science, to capitalize on all the intellectual brilliancy that we have all over Europe in science. This is something really critical. Of course, at the same time, we don't want to depart from the idea to fund only excellence. This is not negotiable. We cannot give up this criterion of evaluation, never. And of course, by discussing and proposing initiatives for widening countries, we want to be also inclusive in terms of putting people within this competitiveness in science that we see all over Europe, and facilitate also the dialogue with the policy makers at the level of the different countries to promote national local support, to promote national local funding schemes, which are a bit similar to the ERC. And what we see is that, for example, there are some successes. I really would like to emphasize the effort of the Scientific Council members in this regard. It's countless efforts undertaken by many of them to discuss with their national authorities, to put this forward, to encourage them to implement this kind of funding schemes. Right now what we have is that 15 countries have introduced initiatives to support their best unfunded ERC applicants. By unfunded ERC applicant, what I mean is that at the step 2, we don't have enough money to fund all the successful proposals. We would wish to have more money, but we don't have it. So we are left with what is called a lot of unfunded A grades at the step 2, and of course also B grades. But what we see is that many local or national authorities have put some schemes into place to support those people, even if they don't have the ERC grants. And this is also, of course, something very important. In addition, several countries have set up some models for, at the national level, to support some ERC-like funding schemes. For example, like the Polish National Science Center. That being said, we of course also take a lot of concrete measures to support widening countries. We monitor their participation in the different calls. We monitor their success rates, as I just explained to you some slides ago. We want to always guarantee a fair evaluation process for optimal inclusiveness. We are taking a lot of care, that's what the Scientific Council takes a lot of care, that there are a good geographical spreading of experts within those evaluation panels. This is something very important. Not only always experts from the same country or whatever, or the same institution. We raise awareness of ERC funding schemes amongst applicants and host institutions. And we, as I mentioned, provide a lot of recommendations to policymakers. Now, in addition to that, the Scientific Council, in order to be more concrete, in order to be more pragmatic, has put in place two specific initiatives to support scientists from the widening countries. Professor Condorisi was at the origin of the first one. This is the Visiting Fellowship Program. So what this scheme aims for is to basically fund some mobility programs to allow potential ERC candidates in the widening countries to pay a visit and gain experience with some ERC-funded teams, with ERC grantees. And those visits last for 1 to 6 months. Basically, of course, those visitors are committing to submit an application to the ERC after these visits. They have to receive a letter of support, of course, of the host researcher to pay these visits, and those visits are paid for by the national funding agencies from the widening countries. Now, those are the countries that were, or the regions that were part of this visitor fellowship program. All the V4 are there, or I should say were there, in the sense that Czech Republic does not participate since 21, and the same with Hungary, not participating since 18. And it's somehow a pity in the sense that on this slide you see on the top part the number of ERC grantees who are willing to host EU research visitors. And on the bottom part of the slide, you see the number of visiting researchers. And what you see is that the offer is much higher than the demand. If you look from 2016 until, well, of course, 20 and 21, it was not possible because of the COVID crisis, as you can imagine. But still, in the 4 first years of this scheme, we do not have a high number of visitors. This is the detail of the number of visiting fellowship by the different countries who are participating to that. You see, for example, that there were 11 Hungarian scientists, 24 Polish, 6 Slovakian, and I'm missing one country. Sorry, I'm missing one country. Is it worth those visits? Well, I will show to you that yes, it was worth to have. 58 visiting fellows have submitted 61 proposals, so out of 70 visitors, 58 submitted an ERC application, and 8 of them were funded, meaning that the success rate was 13%. If you remember the slide I've shown to you a while ago, with the success rate of the V4, it was 8% for Hungary, 6% for Poland, and I think 6% for Czech Republic, or 7% for Czech Republic. Here, it was 13%. So those visitors had twice the chance in terms of success rate as compared to the average of their country. So obviously, this was worth. So that's the reason why we are quite surprised to see the low number of applications to this scheme. Maybe it's a question of communication, so I really would like to communicate and to emphasize this again. This is a scheme that's based at least on those crude data. Of course, those are small number of data. It would need to have a higher number of data to really refine those statistics, but this is for sure encouraging. It means that those visits obviously had an added value. Now, this was the first initiative. We have started a second one last year, again at the initiative of this Scientific Council Widening Working Group, who is now chaired by Professor Jacek from Poland. This second initiative is called the Mentoring Initiative. So basically, the first one, the visiting fellowship, it was more for improving the experience of those potential applicants. Here, it's a bit different. The purpose is really to improve the preparation of those applicants in terms of writing proposal, in terms of defending proposals. So what it does is that the ERC works directly with the national contact points. And those NCP are gathering all the potential agencies who would be interested to participate to this mentoring initiative. On the ERC side, what we are doing is to gather all the ERC grantees or formal panel members who may be interested to be, as we call, a mentor of those potential applicants. So we gather on each side this information. This is the detailed scheme. I can explain this to you in more detail if you are interested. But basically what we are now here is that we have the interest of the national authorities who want to participate to this mentoring initiative. We have gathered the interest of more than 700 ERC grantees or former panel members who are interested to act as mentor. And now we are in the step of July 21 a bit further, where we have the local offices who have received this list of ERC grantees interested to be mentor, and they are doing the matchmaking to organize those mentoring. And by mentoring, what I mean is that what those mentors will do is to provide critical comments on an application that is drafted by a potential applicant. They can also even do some mock interviews, anything that they deem necessary to push and to make an application better and to be better prepared for submitting an application and to defend an application. The participants were those listed here. So basically we have the V4 countries there, the Czech Republic, Hungary, Poland, and Slovakia. NCPs are playing here a critical role. I really would like to insist on their role and to thank them for all the pain and all the work that they do in this regard. This is, as I mentioned, ongoing initiative, but some preliminary results, as I mentioned, it's really attracting the ERC grantees. More than 700 are interested to act as a mentor. I think this is very encouraging data, meaning that a lot of PIs wants to show solidarity, wants to show, have a real embedded willingness to support their fellow in science. I think this is something really nice to see. As I mentioned, the agency has sent a list of potential mentors, those ERC grantees or former panel members, to the NCP of the 9 countries interested to organize this mentorship, and now the matchmaking is being organized. So just in a nutshell about this different initiative, we have the Visiting Research Fellowship, where a number of European countries fund research visits to establish ERC projects grantees for developing researchers' potential before they apply for the first ERC grant. As I mentioned, we also have the mentoring initiative. There, the purpose is to help identifying experts to provide coaching and advice. One thing important that many people tend to forget is that for ERC, a dual affiliation is perfectly possible. As a matter of fact, we have many PIs, grantees, who have a double affiliation. And it means that what we are asking is that those ERC grantees need to spend at least 50% of their time in EU or associated countries, EU member state or associated countries, and between 30% for advanced grantee and 50% for starting grantee on their ERC grants. But for the rest, they are free. It means that are not at all obliged to burn bridges. For example, if they come back from whatever place in the world to resell their lab in EU countries, I mean, this is perfectly fine. They can even keep double affiliation. And even if they want to start up their lab back from wherever it is, they can also ask for this additional €1 million in addition to their usual grants. So we have flexibilities there, and we hope that with those initiatives and this flexibility, we can really help to better encourage applicants to apply for ERC grants, and also to continue, of course, our discussion with the different stakeholders in different countries. And I will stop here. Those are just additional website of information if you are interested. And I've noticed I've spoken quite a lot. I'm apologizing for that. But of course, I'm there to answer any questions and also to participate in the debate discussion that we will have in a short while. Thank you.
before we move on, may I ask the audience if there are any questions to Philip?
This 1 million extra cost, this is for the widening countries, yeah?
Yeah. It's, I mean, you can use this 1 million extra cost for different purposes. The only thing that we don't want is that it cannot be used just to fund additional salaries. We just want that it serves really precisely, for example, to pay for a large piece of equipment, for example, or to pay for reinstalling the lab of a PI in a new country or in a new institution.
I am very glad to hear that this worked, because this was my last suggestion in 2018, and I was fighting for it, and it was vetoed. Yeah. So I am happy that this works.
It works in the sense that some PIs do use that, and they do include that. So it's a different extent, and they're not, of course, obliged to ask for the million. Some of them are asking for less, depending on what are their needs. But we see a substantial amount of proportion of PI who is asking for that.
Yeah, because if you want to get people returned from other countries, even if they keep their permanent position in Western Europe or whatever, they can start with this money, really a lab in their own country. Yeah. And this can be the start.
Yeah, yeah. Absolutely. Tamas?
Thanks, Philip. That was really nice introduction. In one of your first slides, you showed that the Horizon Europe consists of 3 major pillars. One of those is ERC. And the other 2, if I remember correctly, innovation or some kind of applied research funding. And I was surprised that you mentioned that ERC is open also to applied research applications. Now that is surprising, because there is usually a lot more money in the other 2 pillars. So even this small proportion of the total Horizon Europe, what is spent on ERC, even that is used also for applied research. One would rather recommend that the other 2 pillars should be open also to basic research.
I think that's a very important point, actually. It's, as I mentioned, on our side, the idea of the Scientific Council is that they don't want to favor any topic, any particular part of science. They are fully open to any research as long as it pushes the frontier of science. In that regard, that is fundamental research or applied doesn't matter. I agree with you that in the 2 other pillars, they are much more driven by the impacts. For example, in those topics, they define first the impacts, which are often quite applied and quite concrete, leaving much less room to fundamental basic research. I think that's an important point of debate. You may remember that, for example, the usual Pillar 2 collaborative research used to be very open to basic research in the past, much more than it is now. That's a fact. But I think that's a big question of political debate, actually, that is maybe worth to have at different levels, including, why not, also the program committee levels, if need be. But I can perfectly understand that this is an issue. At the level of the Pillar 3, we speak here about the European Innovation Council. That's something a bit different. The EIC, as it is nicknamed, is quite the alter ego of the ERC, but for small and medium enterprises, for example. So there it's a bit different. For the Pillar 2, that may be a debate worth to have. And although we know and we see that there are still an important basic research component in the science funded by the Pillar 2 projects, but there is a lot of request, of course, in terms of impacts that is asked from the applicants if they want to be successful in this Pillar 2.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. I might introduce myself, as I'm pretty sure none of you knows me. I'm István Szabó and the Vice President for Science and International Affairs at the National Research Development and Innovation Office. This means that basically that's my responsibility there regarding Hungary. and also the scientific part for the Hungarian funds for basic research. So this pretty much it converges to the topics you mentioned. And I just wanted to comment that we have a major grant scheme in Hungary, which might not be known, as you mentioned the Polish example. I don't know if you are aware of that we have the so-called Forefront Research Excellence Program, which basically uses the sort of seal of excellence logic of the Horizon Europe. Basically, this means that if you have scored even a B in the step 1, then you are eligible for financing or to apply for financing in Hungary. And all we take a look at in the office with the scientific partners is that if your research team is in place and you are able to conduct your research basically, but we fully adopt the ERC's rating actually for those projects. And with this, as of this year, we have 19 applications. And we still see that this is indeed an issue that the scientists are a bit reluctant to apply, because in their minds it's quite difficult to get ERC grants, and it's obvious why, and you show in your presentation as well. And what I see is that we should somehow make some joint efforts or communication activities or something like these in even more elevated level to convince them that they really have actually opportunities and then they can actually have ERC grants, because yeah, they are a bit reluctant, and that's an issue. Thank you.
Thanks for these comments.
Jerzy Duszyński from the Polish Academy of Sciences. I see in this hall a lot of people that really put a lot of effort to increase the participation of our countries. And let's be frank, we did not succeed. The numbers are very, very small. We have tried different approaches. And I recall my discussions with Fotis Kafatos already many, many years ago. We are all for the excellence criteria. But the point is that excellence in a European scale is something different than excellence on our national scales, because of many reasons. I do not have to explain why. And I do not want to go to these discussions, but something has to be changed, because I think it's very important for our countries to enter this very prestigious club, most significantly. And I was wondering whether we should use the approach of searching committees for candidates. So on the level of maybe ERC Council, maybe of our academies together, jointly, we, by the searching, you know, we can find candidates that we will encourage to enter the ERC competition. Actually, in Poland, we have created this. We at the Polish Academy of Sciences, my colleague, Professor Rowiński, will speak a bit, so I will not kill his presentation. But still, I wonder, what is the dynamics of participation? You know, because we are all aware of different factors interfering, you know. Some institutions were replaced to other countries, and so on and so on. How do you think we should proceed? Because, you know, to increase this, what is your suggestion? What is your advice?
I think that's a big debate, very, very big debates. We do face a major problem, I agree with you. I think that's, if you look, for example, at the three very successful countries in terms of success rates, the Netherlands, for example, Switzerland, Israel, we see that the support of the host institutions and the research organization is something critical, really critical. they really offer the best condition in terms of support, in terms of flexibility, in terms of administrative flexibility, administrative support. I mean, I think that they have a lot of things in place. This would be deserving a detailed analysis, but this is something definitely that plays a major role. That's clear. What we see also is that in some countries there are those what is called excellence pockets of excellence, where you have those places where you gather really a huge collection of ERC grantees. And of course, very often this is, a snowball effect. It's excellence attracts excellence. Once it starts, then it starts to roll. And but the point is that what are the starting conditions to initiate these kind of things? Obviously, the different type of research facilities that can be offered at one specific place will play a role. That's, I think, inevitable. If the PI can benefit of a broad range of equipment, of facilities, that's always something that will attract people, that's clear. I think that's what we have also seen is the importance to have at some moment. I was speaking about those pockets of excellence, but I don't know if you have seen this report of the STOA. The STOA is a specific group of the European Parliament for the science and technology. And they have published a report, I think it was in 2018, but also they did another one, I think, in 2020. And I can send, if you wish, this report to you. And they are testing different type of hypotheses, why some stuff are working, or some others are not working. And for example, they also noticed that in many successful countries, they have on the same place a lot of people working on the same area. This kind of cognitive proximity, where of course it can be seen as competitor, but on the other side, it can also be seen as mutual help and mutual monitoring and mutual mentoring. So that also plays a role, which is much higher, for example, in some EU, traditionally, let's say 15 versus the 100 countries. So I think it's at some moment also it's a question of investment in science, but this we have seen that in the last year, this GERD number, this gross expenditure for research and development has really grown in many 100 countries. So I think this is on a progressive slope. Still, it's clear that the three countries, most successful countries I've just mentioned, they are either close or above 3% of their GDP spent on science and research. I mean, there is no secret. At some moments, it's something that plays a major role. I think the attractiveness, paradoxically, of the private research sector is also important. To have business in your country may also play a role in the sense that it will either directly or indirectly attract a lot of science and maybe fulfill the reservoir, the educational reservoir. It will push this educational reservoir towards higher number because people see those are potential employment perspectives. And maybe among those educational reservoir which is growing, some people will decide, I want to go for frontier science. I want to focus on my life on research, on basic science, instead of going to a big company. So all that, I think, plays a role.
Yeah, you pinpointed to our problems, in Poland. I'm speaking about Poland. Yes, snowball effect, but we have the feeling that the slope is rather not steep in our case, or even uphill, so this snowball is not rolling. But the point is, it will create enormous political problem. It will create frustration in our countries on the political level. We scientists understand the principle, and something has to be changed. Otherwise, it will be a very difficult situation for ERC. It was already in a difficult situation 2 years ago, and I just think something has to be changed. I really think these searching committees
Yeah.
on different levels, you know.
It could be. I also think that agencies must be very flexible with their grantees. That's something on the ERC side that's not on the Scientific Council always asks us to be as flexible as possible with our grantees. And this is what we do. For example, with the COVID period, we have been fully generous in extending projects. We have extended hundreds and hundreds of projects without asking any question.
Went to these countries you mentioned, our countries, 4 countries. I think.
Sorry, what do you mean for?
How many of these COVID projects went to Poland,
No,
Hungary?
I mean, when I say because of COVID, I speak here about the circumstances. Because of the COVID circumstances, we have extended hundreds of projects, but fully flexible. We have been extremely, we try to facilitate the life of the PIs as much as possible. Not, at the agency level, as a funding agency. This is something that we think is very important. And for example, if there are some difficulties between some PIs and host institution, we are open to discuss with the 2 of them, with the HI, with the PI, trying to find a solution, trying to understand mutually the different issues. So I think that's also something which is important. It's, I think the effort lies in different hands, in the PIs, in the funding agencies, in the policymakers.
Just a brief comment to Professor Dushinsky's question. As you mentioned, most of the grants coming from Eastern Europe, they don't pass step 1. And in step 1, the major evaluation criteria concern publication list, for example, or citation or whatever, and much less the scientific content. And as we already discussed, due to our special situation and due to the decades and decades of political problems and the poor development of our industry, we have very, very few scientists who have that many publications which would allow them to pass step 1. So would that be a bad suggestion to deviate a little bit in case of our countries from the evaluation? I know that we have to always observe excellence. That is absolutely fundamental. But what if the case of these countries, you do not simply define excellence by publication record, but put more emphasis on the particular theme of the project? And not that much on the publication.
Different elements in what you just mentioned, Tamesh. First of all, I have to say that step 1 or step 2, the evaluation criteria is really the quality of what is proposed within the application. Of course, the quality of the PI is the excellence of the PI is part of that, but the excellence of research at the step 1 is the main criterion. This is what we are really asking our panel members to do. They have to focus on the quality of science. The second thing is that in terms of specific conditions for some countries or not, that's something that the Scientific Council has always been very reluctant to do, because we want to be always fair towards all applicants. It's quite complicated to do differently, because once you enter into this game, it can be a Pandora box, with each country asking for something more or less specific, which is extremely complicated. So fairness to all applicants is something critical. What you mentioned also is that this citation, all those arithmetics that goes together with, or they are used sometimes as proxies for the assessment of PIs. You may know that the ERC recently agreed to become member of DORA. So we have now a specific task force with many members of the Scientific Council who is working on the research assessment precisely. And the idea is to make sure that we have never wanted to have all those numbers coming as first proxy. They can be associated to the quality. But as proxy, what is important is to make sure that we judge what the PI has contributed in terms of science. That's the first thing that we want to push for. And this is the reason why also the Scientific Council agrees to become member of DORA. But this is a really difficult item, I have to say. And really difficult. What we don't want to see, it's the GIF, or this journal impact factor. This is something that should not be seen. Now, that being said, it's always possible that when you are judging the quality of a PI, of course you can define that this PI has been contributing to XYZ in terms of excellence in science. They have been discovering this, they have been working on that, and this is corroborated by a high citation impact factor of a specific paper. Is it something wrong or not? This is still something that is being discussed at this task force for research assessment, but this is really a difficult question. But what we want to avoid is that we don't want to see that only arithmetics is driving the assessment of a PI. This is something that we want to avoid. Sorry, you were...
Thank you. Jacek Kronowski from the Polish Young Academy and also Young Academy Science Advice Structure. I actually wanted to touch on exactly that point, on the excellence of the PI. And I think this is very important, and there is a debate, international debate on the European level going on now a lot on the assessment policies and assessment strategies. And we all agree that ERC is a pillar and a place to look at for the national agencies for how to assess excellence. And I just try to do it the way you guys do it, really. But there is, I wanted to ask, you said it is very difficult, but there are examples and where the change in the research assessment policies have been quite successfully introduced. And you mentioned Netherlands, which is great in ERC, and they are pioneers in Europe in terms of progressing with the assessment. With the way we assess the PIs and assess their contributions and research excellence. So I wanted to ask you, you said it's difficult, but were there already any steps, any conclusions from that work done on ERC? Or if you can tell us what directions, is that the direction you are going to take in the ERC?
This is work ongoing. I cannot say right now what will be the exact direction and the exact future of that. We don't want to throw all the, first of all, I'm just insisting on that one. We have never asked for excellence of PI to be evaluated only on basis of arithmetics. We have always asked for substantial evaluation of the excellence of PI. This is something critical for us. We always insist on that. Now, we see that sometimes as a reflex. We see some comments, especially not in the evaluation summary report, more in the individual remote evaluation, where we see some evaluators mentioning papers, quality of publication, whatever. And as I mentioned, the task force has just started, and we expect that they will deliver their results in the course of this year. So in principle, by end of this year, you will see what will be the results of the ERC task force on research assessments.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you for this generous introduction, and I think we are moving on now to a series of shorter lectures on best practices in V4 countries, starting with Professor Jan Wondracek from the Czech Academy of Sciences, member of the Academies Council.
So, good morning. I do not have too much time, but I would like to say a few words about the situation that is currently in the Czech Republic and what steps is Czech Academy of Sciences trying to implement in order to increase both the number of applications and the success rate in the ERC schemes. Of course, we have heard that the ERC strategy is to fund the best projects that tend to be highly prestigious for the earners, highly competitive. But I think it's also important to mention that having the ERC grantees in our institutions serves to cultivate the scientific environment in those institutions. That includes the Czech Academy of Sciences. As we have heard in a previous talk, the overall number of applications from the Czech Republic still remains relatively low, especially if we compare it with the same size countries in the Western Europe. And the success rate also leaves much to be improved. So I would like to first show you a bit of these statistics and also mention a few approaches that the Czech Academy of Sciences is taking to improve this situation. So as we have heard, there has been roughly 50 successful grants awarded to the Czech Republic-based researchers under the FP7 and Horizon 2020 schemes. But it's also important to look more deeply into the details that are actually showing which categories actually are the people applying for. As you may see here, the largest part, of course, is from the starting grants category. And I think this is an important fact because over the recent couple of years, because of the improvements in funding and also in building new infrastructures in the Czech Republic, we have seen an influx of young researchers coming back from their postdocs, either in US or in Europe, who are actually already actively improving the environment in various institutions. They also bring let's say, standard approaches for the development of their research careers. And I will come back to it later, but I think it's really important that this is the category that is actually actively looking for support when they are trying to apply for the ERC projects. In the other categories, I think we also see some improvement, but I think it's specifically this category of the early stage career researchers which could actually gradually grow if they are successful in the starting run applications to also move to the further categories, and we already have some examples of that. When we look at the number of projects that have been actually awarded to the Czech institutions, the Czech Academy of Sciences received about 45% of those projects, and which is roughly the same amount of the two largest universities in the Czech Republic. But as we have heard, if we compare it with the other institutions in Western Europe, it still leaves much to be improved. And the Academy is actually trying something in this area. And I would like to go back to this young researchers category because one of the funding schemes which the Academy has at this moment is the granting or prize for the early stage career researchers, which is every year awarded to 5 to 6 people. And actually in this scheme, which is called Lumina Querentur, the researchers are obliged to apply for an ERC grant. And this program has been running for several years now, and we already see an improvement, and the people are actually actively applying for this. From 2021 is also the Czech Academy of Sciences is supporting ERC grant applicants for its own grant scheme, although the money is limited. This is going to the people who either were successful in the first round or were classified as at least category B in the first round. And one of the aims is also to increase the interest of researchers in the ERC grants. And we have heard about the national funding for the grants that actually could not be included among the projects that have been funded because of the lack of the EU-based funding. The Czech Academy of Sciences has actually provided through this scheme some funding, and this program is also thanks to lobbying efforts of the Czech Academy of Sciences, I believe, managed by the Ministry of Youth, Education and Sports, and hopefully it will continue in future. What size we do not know at this moment. Last year, in 2025, we have actually contributed actively to the building of an expert group which would support the ERC applicants, which includes people both from the Czech Academy of Sciences and two largest Czech research universities, Charles University and Masaryk University. And the aim is actually to build, let's say, a bigger network of support for those people who actually actively seek the opportunity to apply for the ERC grant. So together with this expert group and our national contact point, this includes not only organizing seminars for the people who are actually going to apply, but actually guide them through this process and to show them examples of successful applications and to how to actually build a competitive proposal, which includes things like organizing mock interviews, consulting the project proposals from different areas. And in the first year, almost 200 people actually have actively attended these workshops, and I think the situation is rather similar this year. And when I come back to this, I think I would like to close this short presentation again with this emphasis that we see that the younger people, the young early-stage researchers are actually interested in these schemes. They actively participate in these things. And I have been sitting on various panels of our national funding agency for the past 10 years. And the improvement that we have seen also in our national grant applications, which is largely coming from the people who are returning back from various places abroad, has been enormous. So I think despite what we have heard so far, there is some hope for the future, and I think that if we concentrate on these young people, they can gradually move also on to further stages. The improvement may not be imminent, but I hope that it will come in the future. So thank you very much for your attention.
Our next speaker will be Professor András Lipšic, the director of the Rényi Institute of Mathematics, one of the Hungarian institutions which are year by year very successful in applying for ERC grants.
Thank you very much. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Lipšic András, and I'm directing the Rényi Institute, and I will try to collect a few ideas which led us to be comparatively successful in ERC applications and grants. And I should start with a disclaimer. So it is in mathematics. So there are specialties. Mathematics is among physical sciences, but it shares many features with social sciences. As you can see, the gentleman sitting there thinking hardly over a single book. So it suggests the wrong picture, that we only need paper and pencil. This is not the case, but still we are less sort of equipment-oriented. It is in Hungary, so we have the specialties of the country. And I should also point out that we are a research institute, no teaching duties, so all the researchers are only engaged in research. And we are a comparatively small institute with very little hierarchy. And just to give you an idea, we have 60 tenure professors and roughly 120 researchers altogether. So it's compared to a university, it's really sort of tiny. So the first secret I can tell you is that there is no secret, or if there is one, I don't know. So I will just tell you some components, what we do. You should interpret it like a recipe, but you know, recipes might give different results if you cook them in different places. Goulash tastes very differently here than in Prague or even in Vienna. So so the first problem is that we have few successful proposals. The even bigger problem, as we already discussed, that we have few proposals altogether. I should add that whatever I say, or most of the ideas I will talk about, will echo ideas which were already brought up earlier, and even more ideas you already know from other sources or from your own experience. So we sort of cut the process into 3 steps. The first is to find or train or select eligible candidates. The second is to convince the eligible candidates to submit a proposal. And then when we have an agreement, then to try to improve the proposal. So, how to find one? So, this question should be already addressed when we hire young scientists. We should look into the files, and then this should be a component, not an exclusive component, but it should be addressed whether the scientist has a grant-winning proposal. Probably 30, 40 years ago, it was not so important in Hungary. Now it's very important, so we do that. We should make clear early on what are the aspects which will be sort of viewed in an ERC proposal. This is not clear to everybody. Like, shall I take a student on? You should, because it will be very important later on. And there are other aspects, for example, publication strategy, whether we should publish a lot of papers or a few good papers. And we try to push our young scientists toward sort of collecting many ideas and having really papers with impact, as opposed to having lots of sort of minor important publications. It was already addressed early on that the projects sort of the ERC grants don't support very wide or very narrow research. And so this can be adjusted. Of course, we can only advise scientists to do that, but we try to orient our junior scientists to that. And it's always good to have proposals on a smaller scale. I always tell to my colleagues that, you know, you sit down, you feel like you wasted a month of writing a proposal, but it's absolutely incorrect. It will shape your future research just to rethink what you did in the past 5 years and what you would like to do in the next. So how to convince candidates? So our usual strategy is to also explain that an ERC grant is not only good for the scientist, but it is very beneficial for the institute itself. And we play on this social attitude. And I try to convince people that, you know, such grants are very helpful in turbulent times. And these are the only times we live in the past couple of years, so it's very important to have, not to mention exchange rates and such related issues, you know, the supports are coming in euros. We also should acknowledge the work which has been put into proposal writing. And we even have some little compensation for that. But the most important thing is to sort of explain that even a losing proposal is important for the institute because it raises our participation, and we acknowledge that. And the other thing is that it's important to have some follow-up possibilities. It was already mentioned, I translated it differently. We used the frontier expression for this particular possibility, but it's good to know that if you write a proposal and it is not successful on the international level, but it gets appraisal and it is a good one, then you can use it to something else. For the junior participants, the momentum grant could be the next step, and for the more senior, the frontier. It has the rules of the frontier is under crystallization, so they change from year to year, and I should add that it's very important to have stable rules that the people can count on and they know what will come. So we look forward to the final shape of this project, and it's very helpful for us. And then once we have the agreement that the proposal will be submitted and it has been prepared, we need a stage where we try to improve it. And here I should stop for a moment about this step, the B1 and the B2. So there are two aspects I see problems. The first is that there is a big difference between the short B1 proposal and the long B2, which scientists don't want to acknowledge. They think that the B1 is sort of a miniature of B2. You just have to shrink. You just erase a few words and then you are done. And it's not the case. B1 usually goes to generalist scientists, like in mathematics, and B2 goes to the specialist. You have to address different issues. And I should also echo what Professor Freund was saying, that In B1, it's inevitable that the publication records play an influential role. It's because you are a panel member and you get like 15 proposals. If you are lucky, there is one or maybe two where you are an expert. In the other ones, you act as a generalist mathematician, and it will definitely influence you. Maybe in an idealistic sense, no, but it will definitely influence your evaluation. We try to provide professional help, so the scientists should focus on the science, what's written up, and no problems of how to allocate the budget. You know, he just tells us what the intents are, and then we give some advices, like if he wants to run a conference or a workshop or something, and we give calculations for that. We ask the past successful grantees to read the proposals and to discuss, and we organize mock interviews. This is a long process, and it has to be shaped to the particular candidate. Some people are very sensitive, some people support critique much easier. And so these are the institute practices. I just want to emphasize, you know, in terms of stability, our institute has the 7th director since 1950 and the 3rd since 1995, the same deputy director, and this sort of steady course helps scientists or researchers to shape their proposal. So in summary, I just tried to collect what I was already telling you. I will not go through all the points, and let me finish with one question, like why was I chosen to give this presentation? So I will have one more slide to show. Why the Rainy Institute? Well, I told you that we have roughly 60 tenure faculties, and we just celebrated the 11th winning proposal. So to commemorate this number, I mean, there is one sport in which everybody knows how many players are on the field, that's soccer. So we formed a soccer team. Let me also be self-critical here. So if you watch the grants and the winners, there are two facts you might notice. We don't have any starting grants. So we very heavily work on that, but this might be sort of an impact of how higher education in Hungary evolved in the past 30, 40 years. There were great traditions, and when all these changes happened, maybe something was less effective. So we have to regain that momentum with the young scientists. We do have step 2 successes, and you have to build step by step, and we are working on that. The other thing you might notice is that there are only male players in this soccer team, and that's also a problem in Hungarian science overall, but in mathematics is even more expressed. You might also notice that there is no goalie, but this is only because of the democratic attitude in the institute. We defend and we attack together. And finally, you know, this is a soccer team. There are other sport teams where there are more players. My son is a hockey player, and they have 22 skaters. So we have our eyes on that, and I hope next time we will need to borrow skates to prepare the same picture. And this is the theme I would like to stop my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And now we move on to our next speaker, Zuzana Hrabowska, the head of the Department of Research and Development of the Slovak Academy of Sciences.
Hello, Jonapod. Dobrý deň. Dzień dobry. My name is Zuzana Hrabowska. I am a project manager in Department of Research and Development in Academy of Slovak Sciences, Slovak Academy of Sciences, sorry. No, it's not the wrong institution, it's the same institution. And I will present you different view, Slovak view, on how Academy is supporting and looking for outstanding researchers who are future ERC applicants. Our department is implementing several projects, as you can see, HR, S4R, Excellence in Research, and we have several Horizon 20 projects, as well as your access points has been already also introduced to Academy, and freshly new EU Project Support Office, and we have also a second call of a new program, Impulse, today I'm going to talk about as well. A very successful project I'm going to talk is SASPRO 2, which built on a successful program SASPRO, which was solely implemented by Slovak Academy of Sciences within the FP7. SASPRO 2 is Horizon 2020 Marie Sklodowska-Curie Co-Fund mobility program for outstanding researchers of 3 top Slovak leading organizations in research and education. We are coordinator of this project, and together with our partners Comenius University and Slovak University of Technology, we are looking for excellent researchers to come with their freely chosen project to find their host institution within portfolio of 70 host organizations. We offer multidisciplinary approaches to project solutions, quality trainings, together with also the ERC, and secondment in application sector. The length of fellowships is starting from 12 to 36 months. The program started in a very difficult period in autumn 2020, and we hope to finish it in September 2025. We have 2 mobility schemes and 3 calls, the last one pending. We hope to finish it to recruit 10 open positions, hopefully next week. We have already 30 positions, fellows already negotiated. So, and we hope the rest will arrive when the situation is pleased for them, because some of them are also Ukrainians and etc. The total budget of the project is 9.3 million, and the EU is contributing with 4.3. The rest is divided between the between the partners organizations. Sorry to bother you with few statistics on the previous project, but you can see clearly the numbers that total number of finance projects within the first SASPRO was 38. It was not mentioned here before, but the brain drain, we are happy that 15 Slovaks that stayed within the academy and became head of departments, head of research groups, and also director of the institute. So we are happy that they stayed, even they finished their fellowships within the organization. So, as far as I have the information, 10 of them have applied for ERC, unfortunately, as you could see the information given in the first speech. Current SASPRO 2, we have received more applications, and we are financing 30 fellows, and 10 fellowships are still open, and we have already 13 Slovak nationals and other nationalities. For those applicants that do not fulfill the strict EU criteria, the Slovak Academy has introduced a new program, Impulse. We kind of got inspiration from Hungarian Momentum, and it is a new program that is for new generation of researchers, that they are coming to work with their projects, to create their own team, to bring new novelty teams. And we hope that those people, together with the SASPRO fellows, those are the generations that will apply to ERC and hope to increase the level of our success rate. So the projects are for 5 years, and the financing is, they can ask for grant amounting 60 to 160 euros. The pilot call was started last year, and the second call will be just open in June. So we have already 2 fellows working at the institutes, all Slovaks, and they are coming back from foreign prestigious institutions. So we hope that we will increase the numbers as well. So Ďakujem, thank you, köszönöm. Thank you for your attention. I was very short, so we have some time for questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We are moving on now to our fourth speaker, Paweł Rowiński, Vice President of the Polish Academy of Sciences.
Good morning, dear colleagues. Before I will show you this presentation, which is about one of the vines, how we try to support our researchers in applications for ERC grants, I would just reflect a bit to the discussion that we had. So from my perspective, it's not a problem of the PIs within Poland to find, at least at the level of starting grants. This is rather the problem of the culture of the institutions, and to bring those researchers to the Polish research institutions. And this is the major problem that we deal with. And half of researchers of Polish origin go to other countries and other institutions. So in terms of statistics, we would definitely have better results having those people to be somehow counted. But of course, this is the problem of how our institutes and universities are ready to attract researchers with starting grants, and this is one of the major problems. And I believe that there are a lot of support schemes, but what is really needed is some kind of an investment in the excellence of research in our countries, and this is mostly what we need to do. And I'm afraid this is our also major problem. We very often go completely different directions. So that's what we should be fair to say. At the level, and I will be speaking not what's being done in Poland in general, but what we are trying to do at the level of the Polish Academy of Sciences. As I told you, investment in excellence in research is the major part. And for example, we also, as our Slovak colleagues, establish a fellowship program based on the EU program as well. And it is to bring very good foreign researchers to the institutes of the Polish Academy of Sciences. And this is indeed what we believe can be successful at the end. We also, for example, established a totally new institution within the Academy, which is the Institute of Advanced Studies. It works within the areas of humanities and social sciences, and it's also to bring the best international researchers to Poland, who at the end, hopefully, will also help preparing ERC projects. But as a support scheme, we, in 2016, we established at the level of the Polish Academy of Sciences the department with the name of Excellence in Science Department. It is a department which is supposed to support our researchers to apply for ERC grants. It was probably the first one established in Poland, and then some other were established at major universities. But I have to say that we were lucky at this stage that the Deputy Prime Minister of Poland was very much interested in ERC grants, and he helped us to establish this kind of department. I am afraid at the moment it could be much more difficult. So I believe you presented the statistics which embraced all the period when the ERC grants were awarded, but we also try to observe kind of a dynamics, and we believe that in Poland we had kind of a progress in getting new research grants. It is some kind by coincidence that similar to Hungarian colleagues, most of those projects are, for example, in the area of mathematics and computational sciences, and also the Institute of Mathematics of the Polish Academy of Sciences and the University of Warsaw, the Department of Mathematics, were probably most successful. And this is where we observe this kind of snowball effect. So they got the first grants, and then they had this capability and this skill to receive new grants. So that's how it works. So with the department, this Excellence in Science department works at various levels. First of all, it is the place where ERC grantees, potential grantees, get comprehensive information. But what is most important, we try to help them to prepare proposals. We try to help them prepare in the preparation for the interview stage. And then we try to help them to when they already have the grants, with all the bureaucratic matters at the level of the institutions. I need to stress that this department was established at the level of the Polish Academy of Sciences, but it serves the entire Polish community. So it serves all research institutions and universities in Poland. So what is important, you can see a few logos of various institutions within Europe, because at the very beginning we decided to learn from the best ones. So we, all the workshops that are organized within the department for the Polish community are done together with our colleagues from Imperial College, from University of Cambridge, from Oxford, etc. We also visited those institutions. We tried to learn what they did to be so successful in their countries. We also visited Hungary some time ago at Central European University, which was very successful in ERC grants. I'm sorry they had to leave the country. So what is very crucial and most successful, I think that the individual consultations with the, first of all, the team of this Excellence in Science for the potential researchers is very helpful. But what is most successful, we try to marry them together with, first of all, already laureates of ERC grants, and also with the panel members from earlier competitions. So we try to give those people the experience from most experienced people within ERC competition. So we are organizing pre-panel meetings, teaching them how to prepare for example, for ERC interview. We also organize mock panels, and I believe those mock panels are most helpful, and those people, very often they say that it's more difficult to go through this mock panel in Poland than in Brussels. So that's kind of a training that really help. And what is also important, not to finish this collaboration with this ERC grantees at the level when they apply for the grants, but also when they already have those grants. So we try, for example, to promote their success within Poland and also internationally, and we try to keep in touch with them. And also, usually those people are the members of next panel, mock panels, so those people who already got ERC grants. But at the end, I need to say that we are more ambitious. We got already 53 ERC grants. It is far too little for the country of the size as Poland is. So we believe there's plenty to do, but I am afraid it must be done at the level of the system of science, of building excellence, and the priorities within the research system in Poland should be probably done a bit differently, just to focus on these grants which are devoted to excellence in science. But I am afraid right now this program is going a bit different direction. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker will be Dr. Katalin Sajnyi, Vice Chair of the Academy of Europe, an organization that was formed from ERC grantees at the beginning and does a lot of work in mentoring new grantees ever since.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I'm really glad and I really feel honored to present here some initiatives of the Young Academy of Europe. So, as mentioned by Gergely, we have many ERC starting grant winners among our members, so we decided to organize events to help and widen the participation within Europe, so to help early career researchers in EU 13 and associated countries. The first event that we organized in 2020, we had a general plenary session, including general information about the ERC, and then a smaller presentation regarding the equal opportunities. And the second part of the event was maybe more interesting, because in this part we had 3 different breakout sessions, each corresponding to the different domains. And we had, on these events, we had 2 ERC starting grant winners, our members who moderated the sessions and shared their experience. And I think the most important part was also here the Q&A session, so that the early career scientists who were interested in applying for ERC starting grants or in the scheme itself, they could ask questions directly to people who had experience with it. The videos of the meeting are partially available, so these breakout sessions were recorded. Unfortunately, the plenary part wasn't, because we had more than 500 participants and there was some technical issue with it. As a follow-up of this event, we decided to organize and to offer one-to-one peer-to-peer mentoring opportunity to those interested. So we have contacted all 500 participants and sent out letters so they could enter and nominate themselves to become mentees. And we had many members of the Young Academy of Europe who volunteered to become mentors. But to be honest, we did not have a high response rate, and we do not really understand why, but maybe it has something to do with Philip also mentioned that there is much more people who are willing to help, and maybe the mentees, we are not sure, maybe it's a question of confidentiality, so they do not really want to share their ideas with somebody they do not know. So this is something we hope that maybe the ERC will make more efficiently in the future. And then last year we organized another event, a second event, which comprised of a first part, which was a plenary session similar to the earlier one. So we had a general introduction of the ERC starting grant scheme from a representative of the Executive Agency of ERC. And the second part or a second presentation was done by Gergely Böhm, so the national contact point, or one of the national contact points in Hungary. And he made a really interesting and I think insightful presentation in which he discussed in detail the strengths and weaknesses of the applications in the region, so based on what he saw or what was collected from the reviews and the opinions of the reviewers. And as a second part of this event, we organized kind of mock evaluation panels. Again, we had 3 different breakout sessions corresponding to the 3 major domains. And in these, we invited world-renowned scientists who were actively involved in ERC starting grant reviewing procedure. And we also found, or we were also looking and provided them one funded and one unfunded ERC starting grant application that they could read and they have discussed, and this way they provided insight into the evaluation procedure. So that's what we have been doing so far, and thank you for your attention, and I'm looking forward to any comments or questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And now this is the time to open the open discussion, which will be chaired.
Yeah, we already started this discussion after the first talk, after Philip's talk, but now this is really the time when we can discuss what we can do better and what we learned from all these initiatives, how to find really the good candidates, how to train them to be effective. So one question what I would like to ask from you, do you have problems with the brain drain so that the most talented people from your countries goes abroad, or this is not a problem? I would like to know also if somebody is applying for an ERC grant, they not necessarily tell it to the national contact points. They can, I think, submit a proposal without that one also. So do we know all of the people who are submitting an application? And when I read some of the applications and looked at the B1 part, actually I found that they were either too specific, or it's too boring, or not ambitious enough. So whether an applicant would discuss it with many peers, or because it's very good to have maybe these mentoring programs, but I think each application should be criticized very thoroughly by many, many other scientists. And are we effective in that one really? Do we do it well, or we can do it somehow? The other thing that also at the B1 part, one should show also the independence of the young scientists. And unfortunately, in many cases, supervisors or head of departments like to put their name on publications. And this can be a problem. And I think we should do something also in Hungary. I know some head of departments who do it at the universities, which really lower the chance for young researchers to show their independence. So I don't know whether this is a general problem or it occurs only time to time, but we have to keep in mind that we should do also something there. And how do you evaluate the existing programs? Let's say the Momentum program, how successful is really in the ERC application. We heard that this exists now also in the Slovakian Academy of Sciences, the Impulse. In Poland, you started already many, many years ago this program. So sometimes I had the feeling that you are very generous and you gave a lot of grants, and maybe this does not stimulate the people to apply to ERC. And what I saw also with the applicants, and sometimes they are shy and they do not want to share the proposals with others. So they will, okay, I submit and I will see what it will happen. The other thing that they are not willing, many cases, to make a reapplication. And actually, if you reapply to ERC, then the chance to get really a higher success rate is really proven, I think, by ERC. The other thing, what we do not exploit at all, this is the cost association. There are many, many programs, and we are not part of the program. We can also join to already existing programs, and actually those young ones who participated in these programs, they have 35% success rate in the European programs, and also very high at ERC. So this helps really to be in the international scientific landscape and learn, and I don't know how much we exploit all these possibilities. So if somebody can tell, yes?
I will start because Slovakia is a country which haven't have the point on the graphs. Anyway, there's a situation in our country, and we try to fight with it, with this situation. First of all, I would like to say that the environment in Slovakia, which is coming from the government or our representatives, doesn't look for the excellence. And that is the problem of the country, not only the Slovak Academy of Sciences. And we last 5 years, we try to push that when somebody like to be scientist on the Slovak Academy of Sciences, he need to express some excellence. That is the initiative, but it takes time. As my colleague has told, we learn a lot from our colleagues because we need to learn, but everything takes some time. I mean that impulse, we just copied the momentum and we started it just last year. And what is a good message on this project is that for the 3 positions we had more than 30 applications, and you can make a selection. That was very important. Another point is this SASPRO project. This brings some positive concurrence in the laboratories in the Slovak Academy of Sciences. That is what we need. By this, we slightly change the atmosphere, that the people are more one to another, more competitive, but everything takes a long time. That means we have started maybe 5 years ago, now we move to the impulse, and the problem which we have, everything is done from the budget of the Slovak Academy of Sciences, no ministry, nobody, we have no systematic scheme which are paid from the government. We everything are doing by our own budget, and it's not sufficient for make it much more massive. And another point which we have, there is also problem, I saw it that in Czech Republic they have some communication with the main universities. In Slovakia this communication is not so strong, not because we have a problem, I'm very honest, that our majority of our rectors haven't have driving force for excellence. And that is why we are alone. And that is the hard situation which we try to fight. Maybe my colleagues will get me some addition to my speech. But what I like to underline, these meetings, when we had the last time in Poland, we are quite close in connection with the Czech Academy of Sciences. And as I have mentioned, we copied your program. We try to learn, and in my opinion, we are on the track. We will see how it comes. And definitely, I like to also say that no support from the state. And that is why we started discuss with one successful private company. I don't know whether you know it, it's ERCEA. It's a computer security program making company. And they really, we got from them, our strategy is when somebody is not successful to get the money from the ERC, he needs to be supported some of money just to improve the project and submit it again. ERCEA pay 100,000 euro for somebody who is at least in the B category. That is, the private company starts to help us in this sense, and we hope so that this private company also contributes to the mentoring of the people who like to go and like to prepare the ERC projects. That means when we put it together, and maybe our government will change the mind, when we will able to push a bit government, then I think that we will have the basis. But the results definitely will come later on. But we are doing our best.
Yeah, in the case of the young people, maybe I see the possibility with the Young Academy. There are many ERC grantees among them, and they have the willingness. And maybe young people can talk to each other much better, and maybe it can give a stimulation to help to make a better application. I don't know. So maybe this is what we should work on that one a little bit, maybe more. Yeah, Eva?
I would like to continue on what Professor Scheigalik was speaking about, but from another point of view. If we looked at those statistics about the participation of people from, let's say, Middle European countries in ERC calls and their success rate, it actually somehow, unfortunately, correlates with the amount of money these countries invest to science in general. And if we compare the countries of the same size, like, I don't know, Hungary, Czech Republic, Switzerland, Austria, Switzerland and Austria invest at least 2 orders of magnitude a higher amount of money to science. And it is actually costly to educate young people, especially in experimental disciplines, and it is very costly to actually educate them to become scientific leaders. And moreover, those people need to get some kind of self-confidence. And this is all the very fragile and very complex social system. And I think actually the low success rate in ERC grants is actually one of the consequences of the whole situation. And since our governments really do not support science too much, in the Czech Republic, they love to speak about this. But if you look at the income for scientific institutions, it is much worse. So the only way for us is to develop our own support schemes. And I think there were some very nice examples. And I believe that within few years there will be some fruit. And I think if those statistics of success rate are recalculated per amount of money invested to science in those particular countries, we are not in a very bad situation. But of course the absolute numbers are not tragic, but not very convincing, and I hope it will improve. Thank you.
I think any kind of mentoring programs or other tools to improve the quality of the applications works only if there are enough applications. And as we have found, it is very difficult to recruit more and more people to apply. And I like very much your idea, Professor Dushinsky, of search committees. And I think the Hungarian Academy of Sciences should think about being actively involved in searching the appropriate candidates. We have an overview of not only our former institute network, but also through our members who are in universities. So we will have to do something. A general problem which I already brought up is that when we try to encourage people to apply, they usually say, sorry, I don't have enough nature or science papers, so why should I waste my time of applying? So the message still that is coming from Brussels, coming from panel members, is that since we are not specialists, we first look at the publication list, and if we judge the guy doesn't have enough top papers, we don't even look at his research plan. So this should be changed, Philip. I think the message that comes from Brussels is not that the quality of the application is more important than the list of publications. Thank you.
Can I add something to this? That I can see that there is a problem that many of us in the room identified is the step 1 problem, which is certainly partly due to the CV. So the CV is not strong enough of the candidate, which is again due to very characteristic of our science system, which has a slower uptake for the research careers. So young scientists, they spend more time as PhDs and then have a slower uptake in their career. And I think this is something that could be acknowledged by the European Commission, by ERC as well, in form of the extension of the eligibility window by an application, and that would solve part of this problem. And it also related to proving the independence of the scientist, which in these countries happens a little later than in Western countries.
Thank you very much. My name is Szín Ferenc Hulc. I'm Vice President of the Hungarian Academy of Sciences. I would like to make two comments only and raise a technical question. The first lecture which we had this morning, delivered by Philip Coopers, was very informative. And may I ask to provide this presentation to us for further dissemination? Because so many novel information was there that in this compact form, that's very much convincing. And I would propose to send it out to the Hungarian top universities, as well as, of course, the research institutions, and provide assistance from our side, from the Hungarian Academy of Sciences, to digest it. Because I observe a very high level of interest to apply for the ERC grant, but some misunderstanding and misinformation is around. So this presentation was excellent. The question of mine is correlating to the visiting fellowship program. You have shown a table, and in some countries have terminated the participation of this action. Why?
That is precisely a bit unclear to us. What are the reasons that drove this termination? Because we have shown case that basically, at least on the small numbers that we have, it does produce positive effects. It does work. So I hope that those numbers will convince that those academies or those organizations to pursue and to restart again and to better communicate these initiatives. I think that it was a striking also comment of Katalin. You mentioned that basically the offer is higher than the demands. And I just wonder, how can we push the demands? It's also related to what Professor Condorozzi was mentioning. Do we use all those initiatives to the best? I mean, do we exploit them to the best? There is some room for improvement there, definitely. I think that's something very important. I think that I can relate that to the Scientific Council widening group. Maybe we have to communicate again to the better communication of this opportunity. I think that would be really important. I'm quite a bit puzzled by the comments on the step 1, in the sense that what we see for failing step 1 is really the quality of science per se. As I mentioned, this is analyzed by generalist panel members who are maybe less convinced either in the way it is written or in the content that is included in this executive summary. That's the main issue. I hear the perception that this is because of the quality of the PI or the CV. This is not what is in the facts occurring. So maybe there is a perception that we need to correct.
Sorry, just one sentence. That maybe the experience here or a given country. So when all bodies evaluating a submission for local agencies, the applicants perceiving this exercise as a comparing of the numbers. Thank you.
I drew the attention. Sorry. As coming from a funding agency, we will take a look into this matter regarding Hungary, why it was finished, this program. To be very honest, I can easily imagine that it was basically for administrative reasons, because back in 2018 the program was still existing, but after that, yeah, it was finished. But we are willing to take it up again, so take this as an offer from our side.
Thank you. So I'm Tomáš Hromadka from the Slovak Academy of Sciences, and I was wondering if any thought has been given to the possibility of blind reviews, at least in the step 1, when the reviewers would focus solely on the quality, scientific quality of the proposal, and would be blinded to the personality of the person of the proposee, of the applicant. So that would be perhaps a radical departure, at least for step 1. Step 2 would be a completely new ballgame, obviously. In step 2, the evaluations would be different. Has anything like this been considered? Because I know at least at the level of the program, ERC program committee, this has been brought up sometimes.
Sorry, your question was?
The question was if there was any thought given to the possibility of blinded reviews, at least in step one, when the reviewers would not be aware of the applicant's identity.
Maybe, Eva, you can of the history at the scientific council level.
Actually, it was discussed. It was discussed, and we wanted to have two parallel panels, one without giving the CV, just the project, and the other. But finally, for some administrative reason or lack of space or whatever, so it was not done. But it was discussed because there are also, for example, the Volkswagen Stiftung, which does the evaluation on a blind way. But it was not done at ERC, but we discussed this one. But
I can just say a few more words about that, maybe not at the level of the ERC, but if we project ourselves back in history, in the FP5, that was 98, 2002, you may remember that in the FP5, all the applications had to be anonymized. So it was, you know, in this regard, it was fully blind application. This was causing a certain amount of problems, in the sense that as soon as there was a little clue on who could be the person behind, it was, of course, deemed ineligible. And it was quite difficult. Also, some proposals were obvious in terms of who was behind or not behind. So it's never completely blind. And that's one of the issues that we face with this specific scheme, because some research areas, in the way proposals are written, experts can immediately see who is the person behind that. So it's not always necessarily fully fair treatment, equal treatment. I think there are always pros and cons of every single working scheme. And the other thing is that beyond the ID, there is also this, this notion of, for example, starting grants and the consolidated grants, to see how is the readiness of the PI to implement the research projects and to implement the ID, and what was their contribution until then to frontier research. Do they come from somewhere? And the other issue is that, but this is, of course, this can be better assessed at step 2. But at the step 1, if it's fully blind, it's also difficult, of course, to know who has really written an application. And you will tell me that if it's not blind, it's not a guarantee that the application has been written by a specific PI. But I think that this is something that can also be reinforced with the fully blind application. But I know it's a debate. It's I think that it's not black or white. It's a complicated issue. But as Eva mentioned, it has been discussed at the level of the scientific council in the past. But
what will happen if the first step will be evaluated at 2 levels? First, only the project with the acronym, nothing else. And then when you make a selection, after you look the PI. Will it help?
I need again to check this against history. I know that there was in the past, if I remember, if my recollection is correct, I will need to double check that. But if I remember, in the past there was no box for judging the quality of the PI, the excellence of the PI per se. But then what we were seeing is a lot of comments appearing under the quality of science. So it was a mix then of the different type of, of mixing the quality of science and the quality of the PI under the same box. And that was the reason why it was introduced as a separate item. But I want just to insist that at the step 1, at least as far as my experience is concerned, what I'm observing and what is the feedback we receive is that from the panel members is that if a proposal is failing, it will be first and before because of the quality of the content and because of the content of the proposal.
we could see it, especially with the UK applications, that there was excellent proposal written, maybe not by the applicants, but many other professors from Cambridge, UK, or Oxford, and when the interview came, it turned out that the applicant is not as great. So it's again a problem what we are evaluating.
I think sometimes when you have some, proposal on the similar level of quality, it's likely that what can make this little, because the thing is that the competition is pretty fierce at all levels. And sometimes the difference between failing and succeeding is quite tiny. And of course, the top of the top is easy to identify, as always. What is always the issue is this gray zone where you have a lot of excellent proposals. And of course, it is also the case that when you have this gray zone, in those cases, the quality of the PI can help to make a difference. That's clear.
Sorry, I just wanted to ask you about the what you mentioned in terms of the reasons for failing in the B1 step. I think we all agree as scientists that if we want to solve the problem, we have to diagnose it properly. And it seems to me that from our discussions, the perception of what it is and possibly the reality might be different. And so the question is that possible that ERC would provide us or other members, countries and so on with the statistics about that exactly, so about the reasons of the failure in these steps, let's say? Because I think this would be very helpful for us to realize. I think we all agree here when we discuss within the V4, we all really think it is the CV and this is our perception, but it seems it might not be. So I think it would be very helpful for us to have that statistics, to have that argument and the proof that what we focus on is maybe not the right thing to focus on.
Exactly the problem you are speaking about, because many of us are members of the panels. There was, on the slide that was presented, what are the main problems? I think incremental research, bad risk management, and very loosely written proposal. That is usually the main objection. In my opinion, I'm sitting in the panel more than 5 years, and I think that the CV has some level of evaluation, but what you can have blindly, you can read the proposal, and when it's loosely proposal, unfortunately, it's coming from our part of the world. And I think that our problem is to express in a very short area what is the breaking point of your research. We are written 5 pages, and nobody on the end doesn't know what is the breakthrough. And I think that we need to focus on that. I think that the CV is not the main problem. That is my experience from that.
One more remark and maybe a suggestion. So my understanding is that we need a step 1 to sort of speed up and make it cost-effective, the whole evaluation. Because we could do B2 altogether, and this was the practice for journals for many, many years. But now with lots of submissions, even journals changed their practice, and they introduced a scheme called Quick Opinion. And in this scheme, they send it to experts, and it's not a big burden on the Mathematical Society, where I take this example from. And still, somebody who is expert in the ideas gives a very quick assessment, and now the standards are sort of clear, because we all know starting grant winners. When you say that the proposal is not comprehensive, there might be 2 reasons for that. Either it's badly written, or it's not written in your language, and maybe it's harder to understand. I don't know whether there is any objection for that. In my mind, a quick opinion, it takes a few minutes or an hour from the expert, and it should be returned within like a week or so. So it would not take so much burden on the community.
I once an analysis.
The correlation between ERC grants and Nature Science Cell papers given to a country. This is straight. You know, that tells that in some fields, this is the factor. And if you know that at the initial stage, some expert has hundreds of papers to review, of course they go for shortcuts, you know, and they have a week to do this. I understand this. And that will be very difficult to change. We are relatively successful in mathematics in Poland when ERC is concerned. And maybe part of this is because there is no this nature science cell. You know, you have your papers, you know, that you look for. And I don't know, it is a problem. It is a problem. I don't know how to solve it, but it is a problem.
Of course, finance is the biggest. And actually the successful institution that was presented, excellent, the professor of the Mathematical Institute.
This is scheme of searching committee, you know. You are searching for candidates, you are convincing them, and then you are sort of helping them. This is what we should consider.
It's a very small searching committee.
Yeah, enough. But 11 successes. Thank
you. In Hungary, anymore, an ERC club. So they were the ERC grantees. And actually, I think we all offered also a help, maybe this quick look or quick evaluation for proposal. So maybe we can also go back to this one, because I think all of us would be willing to have a quick look on the proposals before they submit, or even much before, whether it's worse or not, the topic is ambitious enough, there will be breakthrough or what to do, and then afterwards one can work on it. And the other thing that the candidates should spend really time, and you cannot do an ERC grant in 3 weeks' time and just write it up. So it really needs a brainstorming and come up with original, very good ideas. So it takes time. It's true, we have to look for the candidate as early as possible and train them. But the other thing that we have to somehow stimulate also the young ones to really have the ambitions that I want to be a great scientist and I want to achieve something. This is also a little bit difficult. The other problem is that I think our countries are really not attractive to foreigners. So we have very few foreign students, postdocs, and also professors. The Hungarian Academy of Sciences started the visiting professorship scheme, I think, which was quite good, and probably we have to continue, and it would be nice to have more resources, to have it more frequently. Because I remember, for example, when our biological research center started in Szeged, there were so many foreign professors, top world-class sciences, and this gives such a stimulation for the students and young people. So maybe we have to move also to this kind of direction, but it costs also money.
So I wanted to comment on what you said about the attracting the researchers maybe from abroad. They can also be researchers from our countries who work abroad, and then they don't see the country where they were educated as an attractive place to do research. But I think I have only circumstantial evidence for that. So please, it's not just the statistics which I can show, but it seems also when we talk between the early career researchers in Poland, and many of them have came back to Poland to do research, and they ended up in the academy. And the reasons why they came back, one of the very important ones, is the early independence. And I think this, you mentioned that also early on, one of the questions you had, how you can show independence if you have a structure, hierarchical structure above you for a very long period of time before you get independent. And I think there are a few institutions in Poland, and it's changing more and more, which provide these horizontal structures for the early career researchers to start off and be really independent and test themselves within 4 to 6 years and then be evaluated if they are successful or not. And I think this can be a selling point also to scientists from abroad, where the early independence and the accessibility to the national funding, which in Poland is pretty decent for the early career researchers, can be an attractive force for people from abroad to attract them to our countries. So I think we should explore that, and I've seen that happening, and people have chosen Poland because of these two reasons, actually, if they have. So I think if we think about this as institutions, we are at the Academies of Sciences and the institutions. Let's think about our institutions as well, about promoting this pathways for early independence, and of course then we can evaluate those people. We don't have to give them tenure. The point is to give them the place to showcase their abilities. Thank you.
I think the initiative now from the ERC to give this 1 million euros to those people who are in the diaspora but maybe return partly at least home, this can help a lot and start a new laboratory and build up a new group. So it can help a lot. I don't know when it started, Philip.
If I remember, it was the work program 2019 or 2020. I need to check this out precisely. It was some years ago. It's not super recent, but...
It did not exist in 2019. Or maybe 20. Yeah, but it's not a big money from ERC because there will be not so many people, but it really can help, and it should be known by the people that this possibility exists, because this gives a security, even maintaining a job abroad, but starting something in Hungary, in Poland or wherever, and then maybe returning permanently.
But institutions in Poland, Hungary, and other countries need to allow for that formally as well. And I think this is the move which we can maybe as academies push for on the institutional level in our country.
So I'm also here representing the Hungarian Young Academy, and so as such I would like to talk a little bit about the early career researcher perspective. So I totally agree with what Jacek said, and also Eva outlined that independence is a key and critical issue. So we are all parts of the system, and I think this is where leaders and academic leaders, university leaders and research group leaders can really help, not only by search committees, but of course search committees are a great idea, but people should encourage early career researchers and also let them be independent. So because you cannot apply for a starting grant if you don't have one paper without your previous supervisor. And I think that's also an issue with the research culture in Eastern Europe. So we have some scientists who are mobile and who go abroad, but unfortunately due to the unidirectional brain drain, very often they don't come back. And those who stay here, they are part of the system, and maybe independence is harder for them or to get it. So we should support them to go abroad and then maybe come back with all these initiatives like that were already mentioned. And yeah, so we should support them, and the snowball effect is also very important. So if you don't have anyone in your environment who had a grant, or if you have no access to practical advice or personal mentoring, then you probably won't be successful. So I think it's very important what Gergely made, and also we had a comment from a Dutch academician who sent us a big list about typical mistakes of applications of this region. So maybe we should try to advertise it and share it with early career researchers to make them aware of these problems. And as already mentioned by someone here, the English writing and grant writing, I think that's the direction which should be enforced, because maybe that's also an issue, especially for early career researchers, that they do not necessarily have the experience to make a really good B1 or B2 or write their projects correctly. And the third point, last point, I think I would, or maybe two more, I would like to mention. One is ambition. So it was mentioned, maybe Eva brought up that early career researchers are often shy. So they are not, in this region, what I heard, very often they are not ambitious enough to target the highest ranking journals, so they just submit to the best available where they think they won't be rejected. So that's also a kind of issue with the research culture. And the last point is the infrastructure, especially in case of the experimental sciences. So I'm a plant biologist working at Eötvös Loránd University, and I think it's really important to help the institutions to develop cutting-edge infrastructures so that the researchers stay in the country and have the possibility to apply successfully. Thanks.
Work on it. And other comments? We are at the end of the session. So I think there are many things what we can do at home. And we can count on the Young Academy, ERC grantees, foreign expert panels, really to encourage the people and help them to make successful applications. And we have to stimulate them really to have really candidates. And it's not easy, but this is the only way how we can live in the future and have really excellent science in our country. So really we have to do something. So I don't know who else would like to add something else. We cannot give, I think, a schedule or something. What are the steps and how we should do it? So we have to see the situations in the individual countries. If we can help one country to the others, it is also useful. So for example, if you do not have enough ERC grantee in Slovakia, maybe you can ask the Hungarians or the Czech grantees, which may be easier. But yeah, we have to help each other and really look for good candidates. But this is also good also for the consolidator and the advanced grant, because also the people are shy or they do not have enough self-confidence to apply. And there are excellent scientists who should be encouraged and they should apply. So I would like to close with that one. We can continue the discussion during the lunch break and even afterwards by contacting the agency or discussing among us and look for solutions. So thank you very much for your participation. And let's go for lunch.